dad.
Probably. Definitely tougher than his uncle.
Yeah, true. Fucking Thomas, bro, such a weak
which? Yeah, I
guy.
was gonna say which one.
All right, let's start, boys. Um, okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to episode 34, episode 44 of the Racing Line podcast. Here with Harry, Joey. How was your weekend, boys?
Good. You know what I just realised?
Yeah,
You always say good evening, but that's only because we record at night. But people are maybe listening to it during the day.
very true. Very true.
Very
We don't
true.
live stream, but I'll keep doing it as my body clock dictates. Anyway, guys, some interesting racing this weekend. So tonight we'll be talking about the Formula One race that took place last night at Circuit Paul Ricard in France. And then we'll have a little bit of a chat also about the IndyCar weekend of racing at Iowa and see where that leads us and where that leaves the championship, particularly as it pertains to willpower and even Scotty McLaughlin with his performance this morning, which was pretty good as well. So we'll jump straight into it, boys. And if you haven't watched the race and you want to do so, please quickly get on there now and watch the race. But we'll tell you just the top three, which was Max Verstappen finishing in first, and then a Mercedes double podium finish with Hamilton finishing in second, George Russell finishing third, and the surprise of the weekend was Charles Leclerc crashing out of the lead halfway through the race, and the boys will get into that very shortly. But I wouldn't say it was the most scintillating race from
I
a
was actually going to use
overtakes.
that exact word.
Yeah, from a overtakes.
Twin intuition.
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, there you go, mate. That's it. I wouldn't say it was the most engaging or scintillating race from an overtaking and passing standpoint, but for the majority of the race, due to circumstances with this tyres, due to circumstances with the current heat wave being experienced in Europe right now, due to circumstances with stupid decisions made by teams and their strategy as well, the race remained intriguing for the whole way throughout. And it actually was quite an enjoyable race to watch. And I didn't feel like at any time I was kind of getting bored by the monotony of the race. So I don't know who wants to start out of you two, but let's kick it off.
Kick it off. So I thought the start of the race was actually pretty interesting. It was a relatively decent sort of cat and mouse between Verstappen and Leclerc. And I was a little bit surprised of sort of how comfortably Leclerc sort of evaded Max's onslaught at the start of the race. And then, but neither of them ever broke away. I think Max was comfortable to sort of sit his second and a half off Leclerc, and they just sort of broke away from everyone else. I think what surprised me the most was how competitive the Mercedes were relative to Checo and Sainz when they sort of all grouped up together. And even though we saw they didn't really have the qualifying pace that they expected, their race pace was relatively decent. And then, so seeing them sort of dice with Perez throughout the race, I thought was good signs. I mean, it still baffles me that they're still so close to the Ferrari drivers in the standings, considering how
it's
the
been
weakness that car has had all season.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
it's been an exercise in damage limitation for them all year, and you can see just how far it's taken them with, as a juxtaposed to Ferrari and their.
But imagine if they come second in the Constructors' Championship this year, which is not even close to being out of the realm of possibility yet. That is something that could definitely happen. That would be an amazing achievement considering where they have been for the sort of pace-wise for the whole season.
Like the point that you make about Mercedes is obviously improvement over the course of the season is definitely pronounced. I think one thing that has to be taken into consideration is at the start of the year, the Ferrari and the Red Bull seemed to be able to kind of get past that car in fifth gear almost. Like it wasn't even like they were at full beans and it was already that clear that they were kind of getting past. Whereas we saw George Russell being able to hold up Sainz for a long time. I think Perez probably wasn't the reference that we need to look at in relation to the pace between Ferrari, Mercedes, and Red Bull, because I think he was struggling all weekend.
Yeah, he
But
didn't
even
have a good weekend, did he?
yeah, I mean when we saw Verstappen's pace with relation to Hamilton, which is probably a much fairer comparison between the two. You know, while Mercedes has definitely made a step, it was very comfortable for Perez, and I think also for Verstappen. But I think also with the Carlos Sainz on George Russell incident, it was 5 laps of defending. But even still, once Sainz did get past, I mean,
He was on the softer tyre though, so that's why I expected it to happen a lot quicker.
he was, but also just we saw it all race with like Verstappen behind Leclerc and with Norris behind Alonso, and then also with Sainz behind Russell. That just due to the nature of the track, due to the nature of the temperatures that were there, that sitting behind or sitting in the wake of another car this weekend wasn't really that conducive or that useful as makes sense. But I think there's definitely an improvement. They've pulled themselves away from the midfield like quite dramatically, and they're kind of still in no man's land, but they're definitely in a position now where if a team does make a mistake,
well, I think they're closer to Ferrari than Ferrari would want.
Yeah, well, the point I'm trying to make is
points wise.
Yeah, points wise, I don't think performance wise, but if a team does make a mistake like Leclerc putting it into the fence, or Ferrari making a decision that is completely
all right, let's go there then.
Crazy, then they're going to be able to capitalize, and they were able to do that today, this weekend.
How crazy is it that we are halfway through the season now, and we are seeing sort of amateur hour, not just from Ferrari drivers, because that was definitely a mistake on Leclerc, but also on still these strategy calls that it's like every week, even this week, the commentators actually raised the point and they said, I don't know what these strategists have been doing. I think he said, I don't know what these strategists are doing, but this is...
They question the models that they use, like whether they're using some kind of...
It's not even a model. It's common sense.
Yeah.
I just don't know why Ferrari always have... Like, they're asking their drivers, and then you got Carlos telling them, no, that's stupid. Why are we doing that for? Let's do this instead. It's like, that guy has so much to think about in the car.
But he was making the right decisions when you were listening to the radio.
But he does it every week consistently. Like, his race engineer needs to kick up the arse.
Yeah.
Because it happens every bloody
why
week.
They pitted. Why did they pit? They had the pace to get the...
They would have finished third. They would have
easily finished. They had the pace to easily gap it. Even if the safety car, they would have gapped it after the safety car left. But I don't understand the strategy call with taking your penalty and taking the losing the track position during the... And it wasn't like if they did it in the 30s, early 30s, mid 30s, maybe.
It was initially raised, I think, with 21 laps to go, and then at that time, I mean, I'll say this: Paul Di Resta's commentary this weekend was awesome. It was great having him.
Mediums.
But it was great. I think it was like he's quite a he's a new voice, obviously, and I'm not saying anything about Martin Brundle because I think he's awesome as well. But he was giving some really good
modern insight.
Modern insight, and
he's growing on me.
Yeah, he made the point with 21 laps to go, saying, well, they've got to make the decision now because they're going to get to the point where they're going to run out of time. And it ended up being like 20 or 38 seconds that they needed to catch up in the last 10 laps. Whereas if they make that decision 10 laps before or 15 laps before, then they definitely do have enough time for that push. And I think Sainz definitely, like, over the course of the weekend, it was quite strong all weekend. In the qualifying 3 run, he sacrificed his lap, obviously to give Leclerc the tow. But he was definitely a bright spot up till that point, and he was he was doing everything that he needed to do, to maximize his result. And I don't know. If you saw my race prediction, I had this theory in my head that by starting on the hards, he would get a safety car and he would kind of be in an ideal position by the end of the race. And I kind of thought when I saw, I think it might have been Guan Yu Zhou go off the track, and they ended up just doing a virtual safety car and head instead, that it was going to be my time to shine. But yeah, sorry, from a Ferrari point of view, absolutely boneheaded. I got a theory, and it's this. I think what we're seeing, and we can use Mercedes and Ferrari as the two comparative examples, is like the difference between, and I don't know if this is going to be politically correct, but Germans traditionally, zero emotion, all about clockwork, all about efficiency, all about precision. There's nothing emotional. There's nothing like rash or anxious about decisions that are made. And it's evident through the way that they operate as a business. It's evident through their leadership from the head down with Toto Wolff. It's all about maximizing efficiency and maximizing output and getting rid of any anxieties that might weigh into decisions. And with like Ferrari, and it's something historical. I mean, you put up the video about Niki Lauda and James Hunt that Josh Revel made this week. Yeah, and even back, like I was watching the video last night, even back as far as the 70s, they were still making boneheaded decisions when it came to race strategies. So I don't know if it's like an Italian like emotional thing, and then it's getting to crunch time and they kind of start yada yada yada, like getting their hands moving around like exactly, tossing the dough around, and they kind of feel like they need to do something, but there isn't the clinical, methodical, clockwork kind of nature that we see from other companies.
Do you think now the championship is done?
Yeah, that killed it.
Well, we've talked about match fitness all year and how Red Bull is much more match fit than Ferrari. We're at race 12.
It's not even close though, Harry.
At race 12, we should be seeing an improvement in their race strategy, because it's the same every week. Like, all right, if you make one or two mistakes here and there, but it's every week consistently making the same bullshit mistakes.
They had the trifecta this week as well. They had the penalty was caused by the team releasing the car in the way of another car, and then we had and then we had Leclerc's little mishap, which I mean,
it wasn't a little mishap.
No, it wasn't. But like,
at least he owned it. I'll give him that.
Yeah, he owned it, but he really had to. I mean, I don't know if the pressure. It's weird though. I saw something today. He has dropped 78 points from the lead of races this year. Yeah. And he's like 75 points behind. So like you capitalize, not even win those races, but you finish top two, like on par to where you're looking to be. And there's 5 points probably within this championship. Like it's insane.
To think that the drop points from Verstappen have been from engine blowups. So the gap in the championship could still be 50 points larger than it is. Yeah. Well, not 50, but at least it could be bigger.
Could be 100 points.
Which is crazy. But I mean, one thing that I did notice before the crash that was interesting was that Ferrari, when Verstappen was kind of closing in on Leclerc for those couple of laps, did not look stable at all, particularly going into the chicane on the back straight. It looked really understeery. It was really like when they had the onboard from the Red Bull, that Ferrari was really fidgety through the corners. So
that was a weird thing though, because that car was meant to be running the high downforce package because they were trying to maximize the corners.
Right. But I don't know, because that's the reason why Red Bull couldn't get past them, because they were quicker through those corners.
I thought this was also a good point Paul di Resta made at the start of the race. He said it's going to be interesting seeing how the tyres last on the Ferrari. If it's running the high downforce package, it will probably be burning up its tyres through the corners a lot quicker than a car running a low downforce package. I mean, I don't know if that was the reason why Leclerc lost it through the bend.
The interesting thing was he did the hard work. Like he'd kept him behind for long enough to
and he pitted.
burn out the Red Bull's tyres. So they got the upper hand. I think their first stupid decision from Ferrari of the race was actually not to pit Leclerc the lap after.
Yeah.
And that obviously gave him pressure to, number one, keep up his pace with an inferior set of tyres. And I mean,
I have no problem.
just
I have
don't
no
think it
problem
was.
with that decision because I think if they were running to a number and they had a plan, if they got to lead to get to the end of the race as quick as possible, that's one thing. I mean,
Yeah,
in
but they were
hindsight
running.
now-
They were running to a number, but they were 2/10 off that number every lap based on the radio message that went.
Yeah, they kept him out
after
longer. They kept him out longer because the pit window wasn't quite the 28 seconds or whatever it needed to be. It was just under. So they were trying to push that. They were trying to push that time so he came out in front of Max, but he was just under.
Well, I have no intention of defending Ferrari because then from what I saw at the end of the race, I mean,
well, that's the most.
I think we've discussed it a bit already, but any way you look at it, it makes no sense. You know what I mean? Like, so you have the 5-second penalty. You know you have to traverse the pit lane. You've just passed the car that is going to hold you up. Like if he was stuck behind the Red Bull and the Mercedes, maybe try and hope for a safety car. But he had just passed him, and the dumb thing as well, you heard him while they were dogfighting. You heard the radio saying "pit" like at the last minute.
Yeah.
And you're like, dude, like,
let him
why
race.
are you doing it in the middle of a dogfight? And then so you do all the hard work, you get the clear track, and then you decide to pit. Like your tires were by far the best out of the three.
And that's the most Ferrari thing to do too.
But also take into consideration the fact that
it's self-sabotage.
Once he got past them, those two dog fought for the rest of the race. So they were taking time off each other. I mean, there was probably some argument to be made that there was a chance he could catch Hamilton, who was 4.5 seconds up the road. And I don't think that would have been too far-fetched to think.
I mean, he had the 5 seconds that was always going to slow him down.
I'm not saying that he would have beat him in the final reckoning, but I think there was a very real chance that he would have passed him on the road.
Do you think that? I mean, the thing is, I think Ferrari showed a lot of faith in Sainz at the start of the year while he found his feet.
Yeah.
But now I think he's really found his feet.
Yeah.
He actually looks at the moment like the more stable driver. I don't know if it's because there's no pressure.
Charles is quicker.
Yeah.
But he's more inconsistent.
Yeah. This was I was thinking about this also today because I thought it would probably be a good thing to talk about. But I think if we were to look at his career at McLaren as well, if you were to say of Sainz or Norris, who on their day probably had a higher ceiling, I would probably say Norris. But over the course of a championship, who was going to manage the valleys and peaks more effectively? I would say Sainz. And we saw that. We saw over the course of a season, Norris had more, headlining moments. But by the end of the championship, they were very close and Sainz was ahead. And I think what we're seeing now, particularly at Ferrari, it took him a little bit of time to find his feet. I think he was also trying to prove a point at the start of the year that he had what it took to be the number one driver. But what we're seeing now is that he's got number one, he's got the confidence in the team. He's got the confidence in the fact that he's got a 2-year contract. And we're just seeing him like he's not on his day, and we've seen it now, he can win a race when everything goes his way. But when it doesn't, I mean, even going from last to fifth in as quick a time as he did, the man's got talent, and he's being able to minimize those bad days. And we look at his teammate who has more talent, who's probably got a little bit more raw pace, but the mistakes that he's made at Imola, where was the second one? At
This
Spain?
was his second, I think.
This was his third.
No, he's had 3, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if the other one was a mistake, but he's lost out when he was in the lead. It might have been
I don't want to blame him for the car failures because that's something that he can't really help.
Well, this is 50 points.
This is a bad one. This is a bad one.
50 points lost in the championship. Maybe not 50 because he ended up finishing in Imola. Regardless, though, there's still significant points. Let's say 30 points lost in the championship, and from a leading position, purely on his own. I mean, it's hard to it's hard to win like that. The other thing that maybe it's not relevant because he's been in the game for so long now, particularly at Ferrari, but this is like the first real chance that we've seen Leclerc have like a season where he's expected to win a championship. A couple of years ago when Ferrari had the oil burn conspiracy, he had
With Vettel.
yeah, he had fleeting moments of excellence, but it wasn't like the same pressure of mounting a championship
Yeah,
push.
but you know, what, I don't believe that. I don't believe that argument either because Max has only had one real chance of winning a championship and he did it. You know what I mean?
In saying that, Max has been even
The Red
like
Bull was a better car earlier.
yeah. But also we've seen Max in the Red Bull screw it. You know what I mean? Like he has made mistakes. He's obviously still very young, but in his early career at Red Bull, we've seen him make a number of mistakes. Like at Monaco, for example, I think it was 2018. You know, primed to take the pole, puts it in the wall. Like there has been mistakes in pressurized positions from Verstappen as well. Even when you look at the incident in Monza.
Well, his nickname was Crashtappen.
Yeah, so I think what we're probably seeing is a new experience for Leclerc this year, heightened level of expectation, heightened level of pressure on him, and he's pushing hard, and he's probably pushing too hard, and he hasn't had to do that before, and he's learning.
Yeah, I think it'll be better for it next year if the car is as competitive
as it is now.
Yeah,
I think next year's going to be too late at the pace Mercedes is now seeming to be making ground.
No,
three-way fight, mate. You never know.
I honestly think if Mercedes get not even to Ferrari's level, just close enough, I feel like I'm impressed, man. Even Lewis, like the last two races, he has definitely found the form that we were critical of at the start of the year.
He was my driver of the day yesterday.
He really like his start was phenomenal.
Yeah,
awesome start. I mean, now that he's I think he's beaten George in qualifying the last 2 or 3. So he's putting himself in the position now to be sort of slightly closer to the front.
Yeah.
He didn't have to deal with any dogfighting yesterday, and then with the retirement of the crash of Leclerc, he was a comfortable second, but it wasn't at a pace that looked like that the car was really bad. Like you can tell that car definitely is a lot better than what it was, say, 4 races ago.
Yeah, 100%.
And even though it's not at the level that,
with all due respect,
Ferrari
it probably
and Red
just
Bull
needs an engine now. It probably just needs a few more.
But not even that. Like you can see that they're working. They've totally sort of redesigned that car and they're redesigning it on the fly. But every time they bring an update, it gets a little bit closer and a little bit closer.
Yeah.
And even like you saw with George, it's slower than the other cars. But if they get in front, they can be a handful and waste a lot of time for the guys trying to come through the pack.
They're kind of like McLaren last year or the year before last, when they were like a second and a half off the pace, but they were fast enough that if a Mercedes was behind them, they could keep them behind them,
and they don't make mistakes.
Yeah, and I think that's. I mean, I think we could probably talk about George a bit this week. He's kind of still impressing. He does complain a lot, but
how good was
I'll tell you that.
How good was his dummy at the end of the race? That little fake.
I liked that. Well, I liked how the whole strategy of backing
really
off so
smart.
much.
The FIA came out. There was some control thing with Perez's car. That's why he was so slow. So something actually happened there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So it wasn't that he didn't sell him a dummy.
No, it wasn't Perez being.
Do you know what I do like about Russell now? I think that him having that blue helmet and blue number it's a bit more like aesthetically pleasing as well.
Compared to what?
Compared to when it was just black.
Oh, red and black.
I'd have given him a 10th or 2. But
he's been worse since he's had the blue number and the blue helmet.
You're really on these hot takes lately, mate.
He's an oracle.
To be honest with you, Mercedes, though, all jokes aside, Mercedes have they pretty much maximized every race this season. And they're slowly kind of percolating, and that hopefully by the season's end they'll be in a position where they're a little bit more competitive to give either of them the chance. But what I did like also was...
Did you guys notice how close my top 5 was to reality?
No.
Compared to you guys?
You did call Leclerc. But can I say with Mercedes, their car and engine isn't as quick as the other two, but it doesn't break. So when the other two do break, they're there to collect the points. And I don't know. That's how they've managed to stay so close to Ferrari, because Ferrari just keeps on breaking. Yeah, Ferrari just keeps breaking.
And we keep making statements.
We saw another Alpha break as well.
They'll get their act together. But the reality is, there's got to be a bit of soul searching at Maranello over the winter break, because they've lost the championship for themselves at this stage, and obviously they're in a position now where their constructors is pretty, I would say it's out of reach if Red Bull keep performing at the level that they're at. But yeah,
Ferrari needs to be doing 1-2s for the rest of the year,
just to have a sniff. But
just to have a sniff at both championships. It's from how we thought this season was going to go, and like for moments in races, you would think that this championship was neck and neck, and it really should be. I would love to see who's led the most laps as well, because like the long and short of it is that the Ferrari car, as good as we hype it up to be, and probably as good as it is on most days, there is the package itself is so brittle, and then we see it in the Alfa Romeos as well, and even the Haas's. You can't trust that your engine. It's sort of like a game of Russian roulette of whose engine breaks on any given day. You know what I mean? So then I think
what they've done this season, because there was obviously they were a ways off last year.
Do you reckon they're just running it that much harder?
I just think that they were in a position where they had nothing to lose. So they erred on the side of crossing the line and being a little bit risky to be closer to the front. Like obviously they're running the engine a little bit on the hotter side, not physically on the hotter side, but kind of a little bit closer to the line. Obviously, yeah, just to make as much
power,
just gain as they could based on their relative lackluster nature last year. And they're at a point where I don't think they expected to be as competitive as they were to start the season. And the car probably isn't as refined. It's fast because they've pushed it that far, but it's not as refined as it needs to be, particularly up against the likes of Red Bull, who have had those years of blowing up engines, and Honda has had the years of tweaking and refining and going through those reliability issues in the 3 seasons before their championship winning run.
They had it this year though, but we saw the Honda blowing up at the start of this year, and I feel like they've turned it down just to get the reliability out of it.
But Joe, they very well might have, but they might have turned it up to begin with to run with Ferrari, and they've realized that Ferrari is quick, but it doesn't have any longevity.
Life. See, that makes me think Merc's done the opposite, right? Because it's not braking,
but it's not fast.
It's not fast, so it makes me think that until they figure out why they can't run it at a higher level, they've turned it down a bit, and that's why everyone in a Merc engine's struggling.
Can I interject about the whole Merc engine
was
thing?
Blowing up as well.
The problem with them, I think the Merc engine isn't that bad. If you look at the teams who are running Merc engines,
it's getting better.
The Williams team, their car, it was shocking at the start of the year in terms of design. I was watching a really interesting video this week about Alfa Romeo, and the whole premise was, how can you expect a team that has only ever copied other teams' designs to then be able to design their own car functionally, after not having to do it for a couple of years?
Like Sauber as a team.
Yeah. So I thought that was a very interesting sort of take. And then we've seen for probably the first time in a long time, Mercedes have designed a car that fundamentally didn't work. So, I mean, I think we say the Merc engine, but I think just in general, the 3 teams running Merc engines have designed poor actual cars, like all at the same time. I I mean,
Could be plausible, Joe.
even the McLaren has
Yeah.
got fundamental
It's
design
fickle.
issues that don't let it perform at certain tracks. I mean, none of the teams have a car that can even consistently run. Say, like the Alpine is always 6th to 8th, like every race. You know what I mean?
Well,
None of them teams really have that.
Well, this is probably a good segue then into the next thing I wanted to talk about, and it was some honourable mentions. And two
Stroll.
drivers that stood out. Oh, he got a point, so we'll give him that. He's had 3 1-point finishes this year.
Good man.
Yeah. Anyway,
That's not bad for the car he's driving though. He beat
for the
he
ambitions
did
of
beat
the
Vettel.
team.
He beat
Yeah.
Vettel.
Yeah. Fair enough.
Just.
Yeah, but
Did
that
you
was
see? Did you see that bloody
Yeah, I
thing
did.
on the last
I
lap?
did.
that was
I
some
did.
dogfight and a half.
Go Seb.
Yeah, I was hoping Seb won too. Like,
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Even if he turned him, I would have been happy. But my two
Stuff
honourable
Stroll.
Fuck that hippie
mentions.
Ken.
My two. He's become woke as a Sebi.
Yeah,
Too
Save
much.
the bees.
should just
Keep
shut
your-
up.
Just keep.
He wants to
your
save the
helmets.
bees. He wants to save the planet.
These
while he's
people that want
racing
to turn their
a
helmets
Formula
into
One
billboards,
car.
just
I'm
have
not
a
getting
nice
into that
helmet,
today. We've
keep
got
it the
other things
same.
to talk about.
But my two honourable mentions from the race were number one, Nando. Got ahead
Lando or Nando?
Fernando.
Yeah.
Got ahead of
Everyone.
everyone. Maximised the output of that car based on their qualifying pace. Shouldn't have been there. And then his absolute cool as a cucumber response, telling his engineer, "Yes, I want them behind me. I want them close. I want them to cook up their tyres." I mean, it just
He's my
speaks-
favourite. After DR,
speaks-
he's my favourite.
It speaks volumes about the man.
Yeah.
And I think my other honourable mention, even though he didn't get any points this weekend, was and we've spoken about him before, was Alex Albon.
Clearly outperforming his teammate.
Just putting in solid performances. The car's obviously better than it has been in the past. It's definitely not in a position to, on like a good day, a dry day, battle for the points. But he's putting in a good fight, and for him to be in 10th, 11th, and then eventually drop to 13th at the end, but for him to be there or thereabouts consistently every weekend.
The thing is, well, the
awesome.
gap between him and the cars ahead of him is shrinking drastically as well.
That's exactly right. He's not by himself. He's in a pack.
Yeah.
He's racing in a pack, and I think this year is going to do him a world of confidence.
Do you think he'll stay at Williams? I think there's no real place for him to go anyway. Do you think he'll be staying at Williams by the end for next year?
Yeah. Because I don't think AlphaTauri will change their lineup.
No, I don't think so.
I don't think he'll go back to AlphaTauri. Even
He's
though
not-
he's
he's not
technically
going
a
to
Red
Red
Bull
Bull.
driver, but
He's not going to Red Bull.
You know what, as well, though, I don't think there would be much reason for him to change because the only teams he would probably I can't see any team he could go to.
do you want me to throw a spanner in the works?
No, I wanted to discuss.
But can I just quickly make a spanner?
No,
Can I just
tell
throw
me.
a spanner?
Tell us.
Well,
that.
I was reading an article today with Toto talking
What about Piastri?
Toto talking about Hamilton, how well he's doing this year, but also the fact that they have had retirement talks this year for the first time. Which
He's not
kind of-
retiring.
No, I don't think it wouldn't surprise me if he did or if he didn't. It's probably going to depend on the car they have next year and whether the numbers are better than they are this year. But if he was to have another year at Williams and maximize his performance there, and George was in a position where he kind of became the alpha, then it wouldn't surprise me to see them kind of go Rosberg and bring in kind of a solid number two that on a good day could get a win, but wasn't going to challenge the lead driver being Russell. Like, I could see that happening if he was showing the maturity and the development that he has, even just after this half season.
I don't know. I don't know if they would take Albon. I think they'd take someone like Lando before they took Albon.
Problem with Lando is that he always signs like multiple year extensions early in his contract.
That I'm sure his contract, like Daniel's, has clauses in it where he can break it early.
What
But
did you think of Daniel this weekend?
um, I've noticed in all of his races recently, he's quick on the hard tyre, but when he puts on a medium or a soft, he can't keep at the same pace.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's the car, like he can't get the heat cycle through the tyre with that car. But on the hard tyres, he's on par. But then
When
I don't know.
everyone's a bit more grip limited, but then when they're able to extract a bit more juice from it, he doesn't.
He's dropping off. But he
Well, it's the same
did,
in qualifying.
yeah.
And it was really weird. Like, it's freaking sad. But 13 races this year, he's out qualified Lando twice, and then like when you hear the commentators say, "Oh, he's done better this week. He was only 1/10 off." I'm like, shit. Like that's not
Yeah, but
that's not the deal.
yeah, no, it's not. And I'm hoping it's coming. He came out and said he's still not happy.
You know how
But-
far off?
but
You know
he-
what his sorry.
Mm,
Do you know what his average qualifying time difference is this year to his teammate?
probably 4/10.
6/10. I heard that this week, and I'm like, bloody hell.
Yeah, I think that'll come down, hopefully. But yeah, look, not performing as well as he should. I'm DR's biggest fan, but he needs to pick it up quickly. But at the end of the day, he's in the car next year. Nothing's going to change. So
Do you know what was it? You know, it was good to see though, that Ocon was sniffing his rear end for 25 laps,
yeah, and couldn't get. And
literally
that
within
Alpine,
1.5 tenths for the last quarter of the race, and he kept him behind him, and I think that it's only fighting for a second point, and that's not a whole lot to write home about. But when you're racing for points between 6th and 10th, and you're able to, keep that position and essentially break even with Alpine this weekend, like on points. That was a bit of stoicism there. I was happy to see that.
that's what I mean. I think he is getting a handle on it. He's driving better, but that Alpine, and I think Andreas Seidel came out after the race today and said, in quali spec, the McLaren seems quicker at a track like this, but in race pace, they just couldn't match it. Like Lando was dropping off rapidly off Fernando as well.
Yeah.
I think it's to do with the actual fuel weight as well. I think they were saying that the even with the Mercedes, with full fuel load, I think the way that is the way the car distributes its weight, actually suits the car in full, like as heavy. Whereas like some cars,
But when everyone's heavy.
Yeah, when everyone's heavy, it brings it much closer to the grid. What do you guys make of the Fernando Alonso to Alpine WEC revelation that came out this week? It tells me that Piastri is not racing for them next year. That's for sure. So I think he'll be racing for Williams.
But it does tell you he's coming.
And it tells me that he's going to be coming. I think, putting Fernando in the car, in their endurance car, the first year it comes out, it's going to bring a lot of publicity to the team, which they probably want. And I think it will give Piastri a year to sort of get his teeth or get his feet wet without having any pressure at all on him, which will be, it's beneficial for everyone involved, really.
Are we sold that what's his name will be out of the drive next year?
Latifi.
Yeah.
I don't think Williams need the money anymore.
What has he done?
No, I agree.
And yes, his car only got updated this week to the new spec car, but still
Did nothing.
What has he done to even make you think he's competitive?
He made Q3 once.
He's still the last. Yeah, he got to Q3 in the wet. Congrats, man. But in terms of race pace, was he last again? He didn't even finish today. He's last on track.
He did finish.
No, he didn't. He didn't.
He got wiped out by someone this week.
He was still running last on track. Him and I think Magnussen had a bit of a collision, and it was half his fault, half Magnussen's fault.
No, it was Mick Schumacher. Yeah, and Mick Schumacher was on the outside of him.
It was a bit of tit for tat, but like
he just lost it in the mid corner, and then
we talk about the Canadians and I would hate to have Canadian followers because we just shit on them all the time.
We do have Canadian followers.
But even
Latifi's my favourite Canadian, by the way.
He might be your favourite, but he's not the better of the two. Because there are days that Stroll actually shows little bits of racecraft, sort of dog sort of mentality of not letting people past him.
No, I think.
Whereas I've never seen aggression from Latifi. No. Ever. Even in his F2 days.
Do you know what was the
he
most
was a good racer, but never a great racer.
Do you know what was the most telling indictment against Lance Stroll? The year of the tracing point, because the car had potential, and even by he got a few podiums. He got 2 podiums, I think it was. But I'm just saying. But even by the standards of Checo that year, he was able to get a win. Just seemed a lot more competitive. He just makes mistakes.
We're not measuring Checo to Stroll. I'm talking about between what just some moments that we see from Stroll compared to moments that we've never seen from Latifi. Yeah. You know what I mean?
He doesn't belong in the sport.
I don't think he's never given me a sort of a wow moment. I thought, you know what, that's actually a pretty decent, like something that I didn't expect him to achieve. Like Albon's been doing it all year. Just little moments of, oh yeah, that's like not, it's not a point, or it is a point, but it's a good effort, and it's something that we're not expecting every week. Whereas with Latifi, unfortunately, this is his 3rd year in the sport, and we've seen nothing.
Question.
And that's the long and short of it.
Joe, is he top 20 driver in the world?
Who?
Latifi.
No, I don't think so. I think
he shouldn't be there.
I think if you could put De Vries and he'd do the exact same job and probably better.
De Vries did a good job.
The interesting thing about the Latifi situation is that like Marcus Ericsson was like Latifi 5 years ago. Had a bit of money from Sweden, probably didn't deserve to stay in Formula One. In his defense, he was never in a car that had any real chance of doing anything, and we didn't see anything.
Leclerc spanked him in the Alba.
Yeah, and that's right. But now you look at him in IndyCar, and there's definitely some talent there. But I think maybe it's part of it is also like you've got to have like a level of drive and belief and will to make something from the opportunity. And I don't know whether
the difference. The thing with Latifi is that Latifi says the right things, and it seems like he's a generally nice guy. Huh?
Can I oops you?
No, because you're waffling.
But like Chris D'Elia, because I was in the middle of a fucking... I didn't even want to swear, but I was in the middle...
Oops.
Cut that out. I was in the middle of like a point, and then you just like... It's like I'm not even speaking. Anyway.
Hungary next week.
Yeah, well, I don't know if it's going to be a great race because it's... You know what I did here, which was good? This year, passing is up 40% on last year.
With DRS zones are up 40% longer as well.
Passing is up 40% this year.
They can follow, but...
No, they didn't.
So whether there's going to be overtakes into turn 1, into turn 3, maybe into turn, I think it's 13, we'll wait and see. But great track. We've put it in our top 10. You can see that on our socials now as well, Hungaroring.
I didn't have it in my top 10, by the way. Just
well, fair enough. I did. I love it. DR loves it. He's won there. Let's see if you can give him a bit of fortune. Shifting across the ocean now to the United States, to the cornfields of Iowa.
Can I just quickly?
Yeah.
I'm the biggest Formula One fan. We all know that.
Yeah.
I'm actually getting more excited at the moment watching Indy.
Yeah. It's pretty awesome, man. Like, they're racing on ovals, and they always talk shit about oval racing, but...
Mate, I was...
Pretty
good. You called me an elitist earlier this year.
I did.
Right? I was always like...
I do.
I was always like, how hard can it be to turn left 4 times?
Did you see how sketchy it was getting off the second turn?
Now that I've watched it, I get it, right?
Yeah.
But I always thought, what a piss take! Like they're just turning left.
Yeah. Do you
Well,
want to,
that
if
that
you want
track
to,
is interesting because it's not actually banked that much,
yeah, that's right.
and because it's so flat, they are working the wheel really hard on, especially on that track.
Yeah.
Um,
If you wanna like realize how difficult and how not boring oval racing is, go look at um, like the crash of Robert Wickens and see what that did to an up and coming superstar of that sport. And you realize, freaking hell, this is like a men's race. But take,
having said that, I had a point 2 pods ago, and we were talking about Scott McLaughlin in IndyCar about how he was doing, and I never made that point, and you've just reminded me of it. When Robert Wickens came into IndyCar out of DTM,
killing it.
the pace that like he's from his first race
Mm.
running first for the whole race until the last lap when he got wiped out, and then every race afterwards. I don't think we've ever seen in any sport, like in any motorsport, a driver come in so quickly and really
Own
dominate.
it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, and that point makes no sense to anything that we're talking about.
Although he
But
did win 2 races 2 weeks ago
yeah, no,
in
I would.
TCR, which was awesome. Paralyzed man, 2 race wins. Anyway, we're getting off topic, but IndyCar this week in the cornfields of Iowa for the Iowa
Do you think
250.
about this week and you were like, I want to mention this, the cornfields of, I thought you were going to say something like Hawkeye country. I thought Anthony would say something like that, but you didn't.
It's actually cyclone country, Iowa.
And
Anyway,
Hawkeye country.
and cornfield country, and that's where we'll end it. But there was 2 races this weekend: the
In
Iowa
Iowan country.
250 and the Iowa 300. Race number. Well, you know what? There was actually a few talking points. I don't know if we want to talk about like positions and stuff like that, but I'll tell you the few things that I noticed this weekend that were good talking points. Number one, Will Power is back in the
8 points behind Ericsson at the moment.
he has come on strong. He didn't win a race, but he came second in both races, and he's come back on strong. We can talk about that a little bit. Pato O'Ward,
Good win.
likewise, had a dominant weekend this weekend. Probably the most. Scotty McLaughlin, third on the Sunday. Another
He was
awesome
running
result
third on the
for
Saturday
him.
until his car broke
Yeah,
as well.
that's right. And then I think probably the most, and then I had 2 more points. Number one was Andretti, season done.
Yeah, they're
This
running
weekend
bad.
was not strong for any of them. I think they're well and truly out of it now. But Jimmy Johnson has struggled for the last year and a half in IndyCar. 7-time NASCAR champion, came to the ovals this weekend and was awesome.
Spun out in race 1 and then it managed to be in
Still
P1 at
fifth.
some point.
He still finished 5th.
Yeah.
I mean, like, he was awesome. And it just goes to show, like,
He had a litany of awesome outside overtakes that no one was doing as well.
Yeah, just ballsy. And it probably makes sense because he's used to driving grip limited cars over the
On an
marbles
oval,
and keeping it off the wall. So that it shouldn't really surprise us. But, like, I don't know. You see him in IndyCar and it kind of, sometimes it seems like a bit of a piss take because for the most part, he's a lap down by the end of the race. But it just goes to show that, like, in his, like, native environment, there's still, like, seriously, there's still some significant talent there. So I wouldn't be surprised to see, like, I don't think I think he said he wanted to do maybe one more full season. But if he's able to put together a few, like, strong oval rounds, I think they've got a race at Phoenix again, or Arizona, same place. And like, it wouldn't surprise me to see him in like a Ed Carpenter kind of oval only program, moving forward.
Well, I think
'Cause that
Jimmy
was really
Johnson has
strong.
been doing the whole series because he wants to have a good crack at the
Indy 500.
Indy 500.
Yeah.
The one thing that really he has no pressure on his shoulders is that he's got nothing to prove.
Yeah.
And also he's probably coming from the furthest sort of realm of motorsport that can, like, him coming in as a rookie was probably the most rookie of a lot of the mature drivers coming in, really.
And I think he's also in a position where people, like, everyone's giving him credit for coming in so late and trying to do it the right way, as opposed to just saying, "Oh, screw it, I'm just going to do oval races because I don't want to make myself look like an idiot." Like, he has humbled himself.
There's something brave coming in and putting yourself out there to be sort of stomped on by kids, and you're the best
like
part of
idiots,
45.
like, we've done nothing.
Yeah, we're just talking. Well, I've never talked shit about him because I love Jimmy Johnson. He's my boy.
It's a bit harsh.
What?
We've done nothing with our lives.
Oh. No, but like, he's a 7-time NASCAR champion. Like, he's an absolute phenom.
We started the Racing Line podcast, mate.
True. This is true. And we ticked over 200 likes this week.
250 at the moment, nearly 250.
It was 180 before I put the ad in. So some strong advertising and some money spent.
Yeah, I've done it on Instagram. We're at about 150 on Instagram.
There we go. Like, so everything's going up. Jimmy Johnson's going up in the ovals. We're going up in the likes. So
what did you think about willpower, like, specifically? Because I thought Newgarden in the first race looked dominant, and even in the second race till he spun, he still looked dominant.
Yeah,
but the ability of, like, not taking the points in his position really hurt him, no matter how dominant he looked, because Power got 2 seconds, but realistically closed the gap to Ericsson because he finished ahead of him both times.
In a moto weekend, it would have been a 2-2 finish for the first overall.
Okay.
True?
Yeah.
Do you think he'll see out the championship from here? Do you think he'll take it?
The interesting
he's in the
thing
best
is,
position to.
Yeah. The interesting thing is, and I said it maybe 4 pods ago, I said I expect Ericsson to drop off. Now, he hasn't had a bad race.
He looked really good this weekend as well.
Yeah, I mean, he's still doing a good job. I think it was pretty obvious to see how well all 3 of the Penske cars were going, that this was going to be a big weekend for them, particularly because they had 2 races to maximize the points, and willpower did. However, the other thing that we have seen with Power is that in qualifying, sometimes he's going to start out of position, and sometimes, and we saw it last week at Toronto, he's going to get away with a few dicey moves that one day might put him in the fence. So I think
give you the one stat from willpower that sort of scares me still. Willpower has got 10 top 10 finishes this year, right? 9 of those 10 have been top 5 finishes.
Yeah.
So he's finishing at the pointy end,
or not
finishing at in the good chunk of points at all.
Yeah.
So
I didn't even know that, but that kind of validates.
He's got the most top 10s. He's also got the most top 5s.
Yeah.
But all his top 10s come from the top 5. And I think Ericsson's got the second amount of top 10s, but it's a much broader spread. So realistically, like, and as
it's
much as I love,
it's the whole analogy of peaks and valleys.
He's fallen apart at the end of seasons many times.
Yeah,
like this is not a one-off.
The
that
thing
it could
that
happen. I mean, Dixon looked good this weekend, and Dixon is the king of sweeping in second half of the season and getting the win in the double points round.
This is the point that I was going to make. We've still got to race at places like Road America, Sonoma, Laguna Seca, all races that traditionally are closer to the end of the IndyCar season. And if there was a team that always looks strong in those traditional road courses, Penske does, but Ganassi always looks strong. Whether it's Palou last year, whether it's Dixon traditionally, and if Ericsson is able to finish there or thereabouts, and kind of just minimize those valleys, so to speak, he's definitely got a team that can bring him the championship. And I think to his credit, he probably hasn't had like you said, the top 5s of Power, but he's definitely scrapping, and he's definitely between 8th and up. And that's something that's been surprising to me, because I've kind of been expecting him and waiting for him to screw up or to make a mistake or to kind of lose his way over the course of this season. But if there's one thing that he has to be given credit for, is that he's kind of keeping his head above the water and doing what he needs to do. Number one, to be smart and not to put the car into the fence. But also, there's still a racecraft, and there's still a resoluteness there that is that's worth commending.
If willpower hypothetically wins this season, does
Yeah.
it cement him as really a great in the sport? Because he's got the Indy
I
500
think he
win.
already is.
Yeah, but he's only got one championship and one Indy 500.
Yeah, I think
Or
what
is
it
it two
does,
championships?
I think
One.
what it does is it takes him from like an IndyCar great that we think of now to an IndyCar great that we'll think of like Dario Franchitti,
Yeah.
like, or Scott Dixon, if and when he does retire, or, you know, like Michael Andretti, someone who's won it more than once, who's a household name, and who will be remembered, you know, kind of long past his driving days, which is awesome for Australia. And
I
think
still find it. Yeah, I was just gonna say I still find it crazy that he doesn't get much press over here still.
Yeah.
Well, the sport doesn't really get much press over here unless
Yeah,
you go
but
looking for it.
you still kind of hear about, you know, other sports that aren't as big as some. You still hear about Australian athletes
Yeah,
overseas, and you
it's
don't
true.
really hear about
Yeah.
him.
The problem with Will Power, not the problem, but just due to the nature of his story, he moved over to America when he was really young. He didn't do a whole lot of racing in Australia, so he's kind of like,
Gone
he's
under the
not
radar.
like, yeah, he's an Australian driver. He's definitely an Australian export, but because he didn't do a whole lot of racing here, obviously his junior career was here, but he moved to America really young and's been there for 2 decades now.
Yeah.
And IndyCar just doesn't have the traction that it really should, or that it had in the past. I think it had more traction in the past, and it's kind of building up to that now. But one thing that is very important to the championship, I think, was, and it would be remiss not to talk about it at least a little bit. We've got Ericsson, Dixon, or we've got Ericsson, Power, Newgarden, Dixon, O'Ward, and Palou in the top 6 of the championship. And I think we can probably draw a line underneath that top 6 now and say that's going to be what the championship winner is going to come out of one of those positions, because there's only 44 points between those top 6 drivers. And we've got 3 of the huge teams, Ganassi, Penske, and one from Arrow SMP, all going for the championship. And I mean, moving into the kind of the last quarter of the season, I couldn't tell you exactly how many races are left. I want to say maybe 5. I'll tell you actually right now. We've got 5 races left. So we've got Indianapolis, we've got Nashville, we're racing at Phoenix, we're racing at Portland, we're racing at Laguna Seca. So we're in the final third of the season, a little bit less than a third now, and 40 points between the top 6. So as a kind of spectacle, as a storyline, as a kind of reason to keep people interested in this sport, I mean, what other indictment do we need to give to them? You know, I mean, if you have kind of got interested in IndyCar this season because of some of these conversations we've had, then you're going to love the end of the season. And if you haven't, then I don't know how to sell it anymore to you. Then go watch.
I think
go watch
especially
a mini
the
and then
road
look at
circuits,
the points.
especially.
Yeah.
I mean, it is hard to sell an oval if you've never watched an oval, because it can seem like just a lot of, you know, just driving around in a circle, no matter how hard you know or you can see it is.
Yeah.
But like we've got, especially Laguna Seca, and Portland is a pretty good circuit as well.
Even Nashville last year was.
Nashville's a straight circuit, isn't it?
But it was awesome. The race there last year was awesome. It had these 2 really long straights, and it was actually it was a good race. I enjoyed that race quite a lot.
Just remind me before we finish to ask you one more question as well.
All right.
I find
about
it fascinating.
IndyCar?
No, it's not about IndyCar.
Oh, all right. No worries. But yeah, IndyCar guys, get on board, please. There was one more talk point that I had. Oh, this is the one for IndyCar. We have got right now 3 drivers in IndyCar, all who have some level of chatter about movement to Formula One. Now, realistically, based on
O'Ward,
we've
Herter.
got O'Ward, we've got Palou, and we've got
Herter.
Herter. two of them you would say are slightly bigger commodities in O'Ward and in Hello, and they've probably had a little bit more consistency over the last 2 years. I mean, Herder has definitely had the race wins, but he's also had. That's probably maybe
in the
dependent on
least
the car as well.
consistent team
Yeah,
as
he's in the
well.
least consistent team. I'll give him that. But amongst the three of them, boys, in an ideal world, they make it in Formula One.
I think
They have
Herder,
what it takes.
I think they all could. I mean, I think they all could. Should. I think they're all good enough to get a chance. I mean, I love Herder, and I think if it's easy to forget how well he did when he came onto the scene.
Yeah.
And I think that even like
it's easy to forget how young he is still.
Yeah, he's like what, 21. And yeah, I think that there's definitely this year the Andretti cars are not up to snuff that they were maybe 2-3 years ago when he came into the scene. But I think it is massive for Formula One to get a young American on the grid if they're going to have 3 races there next year. And I don't think we've seen a young American sort of hit the ground running like him. Like even Newgarden, when Newgarden started in IndyCar, he was a phenom, but he never sort of, he
didn't reach the heights until he went to Penske.
He had a gradual progression. Like he was a good driver at Ed Carpenter Racing for a few years.
Yeah.
And then he really made a good championship push with Ed Carpenter before moving to Penske and then ultimately winning the championship. But the way Herder sort of hit the ground running was like nothing I've seen out of any rookie in the sport. So I think
in a pretty small team as well.
I think out of it, he wasn't even in the proper
team.
Yeah. So I really think out of all 3 of them, I'd like to see him get the chance first.
The only other thought that came to mind as well is this: Sergio Perez signed for 2 years. At the end of next year, might be a little bit long in the tooth. There's going to be a lot of Mexican money from Chiaro and who's the other one that sponsors both of them? Telcel. Does that open a door potentially for O'Ward to move into Formula One?
You would have to go with McLaren.
Yeah, I think there's only a couple of teams. I think McLaren's one of them. I think if a team like Red Bull or Mercedes or anyone like that brings someone over from IndyCar, it
would be surprising.
It invalidates their junior program.
What about Haas?
That's what I'm saying. Like Haas would be smart to bring in Herder because they're a US team with a US driver, and they're going to have 3 races next year to sort of parade their US-ness with a new US driver.
Who do they get rid of? But Mick's not going
Magnussen
anywhere.
Easily. Magnussen's older,
but I think Magnussen's also probably got enough to find us another seat, whether it's Williams or whether it's
well, the long and short of it is
Alfa Romeo.
Haas need to find some sponsors also.
Yeah.
And if they're going to have 3 races in the US next year, I'm sure they would be, if you look at...
They want to be more than sponsoring themselves.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So if you can market your US-ness with a young US driver who has actually got wins behind him in your open wheel, and more than just like one, like he's shown consistency.
4 or 5 wins.
Yeah, over a long period of time, or a long enough period of time, like it makes sense. And that's nothing against O'Ward, because I think O'Ward is probably just as good as Herder. I just think it makes more sense, and I can see a clearer path for Herder getting there than the other 2.
Yeah, the thing that helps. Sorry, go. H.
I was just going to say, do we think Andretti gets into Formula One eventually? I know there's kind of roadblocks happening at the moment.
I think he's kind of resigned to the fact that he's over it, because I was listening to something he said this week, and he was kind of, from what it seemed, he was like exhausted by how
bureaucratic it was.
But also everybody was kind of saying, yeah, come in, like that's good for the sport. And then once he did come in or make an effort to do so, it was like, oh, we don't want him there. We don't want to split up our prize money.
Why
And
would
from
you
this
want to?
conversation as well, sorry, just to finish, I think we spoke about it before, but I think he's kind of resigned to that fact, and now they're working with Alpine to figure something out for World Endurance Championship and to run an Alpine in IMSA.
Why would you want to put so much effort going to a sport that
Doesn't want you.
seems, yeah, like seems set on showing you that they don't want you? Like it's not like joining a sport where the budget is 50 million or less. You know, you're talking about a $200 million sort of yearly budget. That's a lot of money to raise. And then I feel like the short-sightedness of the F1 teams to sort of make that
The big teams,
yeah, like
because let's be honest, the decisions coming from
against the
Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull, and all the feeders underneath that are just
Following
echoing,
suit.
they're echo chambers. Yeah,
like it goes against all the moves that F1 as a corporation, not as like the teams, but as the corporations seem
as
to
Liberty.
be trying to move into. Like it goes against it all. And Andretti, like it or not, is probably one of the biggest independent names in motorsport. Like, yeah, we know Mercedes, Ferrari, and Red Bull now, and Red Bull's it's somewhat independent. But in terms of a name and an organization that has a heritage in all motorsports, I think, other than maybe Penske.
Well, something funny,
McLaren.
right? If you know about Formula One, if you know about motorsport, you could argue that Penske is a bigger name. But for the average consumer of Formula One, who has no understanding of any other sport apart from Formula One, if they heard Penske or they heard Andretti, I'm pretty sure that a larger majority of that group would actually recognize the Andretti name before they did the Penske name.
100% they would.
That's just based on, like,
Mario.
yeah, exactly. But also just based on the name living through pop.
Through three
culture.
generations of drivers.
Exactly. I mean, so it's just
Sort of-
more
it's sort of like a-
recognizable.
It's like the name Brabham. Like when you hear it, your ears prick up because, you know, it's got a heritage in the sport. All right,
Anyway,
before
let's
we
finish on that question, Joe.
Before we finish, what do you
Yeah.
think of this? Because I think this is cool. I think it's a cool sort of bit of news, totally out of left field. So this is about NASCAR. Did you hear that NASCAR are running a street circuit race
Yeah, I
in
saw that.
Chicago next year?
With IndyCar. Oh no,
Is
with
it with
IMSA?
Indy?
It's
No,
with
it's
someone else.
by themselves, isn't it?
No, I think it might be with
It's
IMSA.
just a loop.
No, they're racing with someone else.
It's a street loop.
No.
Yeah, it's pretty much like a.
So they're turning
Loush's-
left on the street.
It's a Loush's ring, but for NASCARs.
I thought they're racing it with someone else, man.
No, they're not.
Regardless.
I don't think it's
Bizarre.
a full loop. I think there's a few corners in there, but it's a very simple track on the streets. And I thought
Yeah.
for a sport like NASCAR,
Yeah.
that really is dying not a quick because it's massive, but it's definitely losing a lot of its grip on the motorsport scene.
Yeah, well, they're chucking
taking
a
a-
Ferrari.
Huh?
They're chucking a F1. They're meeting the people where they're at.
Yeah, but I feel like that is actually a sort of showcase that would work on the streets on a simple
Yeah,
track.
I agree. But they're taking Formula One to the people. Like I say, they're taking NASCAR to the people to kind of increase the supporter base. Because, like, when you think about it, Chicago's got one of the greatest speedways in America, Chicagoland. That is by no means,
And they've
unable
got
to
Road
host the
Atlanta
race.
and they've got Road America that they also race at.
in Chicago. It's in Wisconsin, man.
Oh, sorry. Yeah,
Regardless,
yeah.
very interesting. I'd be interested to see what if I was a team though, and I wanted to kind of have a half chance at winning the race, I'd be signing Marcus Ambrose out of retirement for the street race and giving him 6 weeks to prepare, and then
I don't think
see what he can do.
I don't think he'd be that good anymore. These young guys have been driving on a lot of street circuits these days.
Interesting.
I just thought
We'll
it
leave
was
it there.
I thought it was an interesting sort of out of left field bit of outside the box thinking by a sport that needs to think outside the box to retain its fans. And I thought, like,
it's dying a slow death right now.
Yeah, at the moment it is. Did you hear that, Harry? What did you think about that? Or you just don't really care?
I only just heard it now.
Okay, yeah.
Elite, Joseph. Keep it.
NASCAR's a fucking billboard on wheels. I don't know. Is it dying in the US? Because it's massive in like Texas.
It's still huge by like as a comparison to IndyCar, but it's definitely lost a lot. Like it's huge because it's got such a big older audience. But I wouldn't say that it's necessarily like
it's got no new audience.
Creating new fans, exactly.
It needs its own drive to survive.
It does. You know what? Actually,
Really?
if you want to watch a show that's interesting, partly anyway, it's the Bubba Wallace show on Netflix called Race. The parts about NASCAR are very interesting. The problem is you've got to watch half of it about BLM as well, which which kind of like obviously there's some of it like it's to some point it's interesting, but then also it's kind of it's almost like thrown in the audience's face a bit as well, and that kind of might rub people the wrong way a little bit as well.
I went deep diving 2 weeks ago about why NASCAR was dying so quickly. And the general consensus is that number one, the tickets are ridiculously priced. And number two, most of the tracks are the big super speedways that they built in the 80s. And there's hardly any little oval tracks. And the 2 little oval tracks they race at are all in the same state. So they're not spread over the anyway, I think I'm going off topic now. But I thought that was a cool bit of inspirational thinking that might sort of, change or grow the fans of the sport in motorsport sphere.
The good thing about this conversation is that we will have a very similar conversation next week, because next week we have got Formula One on Sunday night from Hungaroring. Sunday, the 31st of December, race starts at 11 p.m. for those people in Australia. Sorry, July. And then on Monday morning, American July the 30th, we have the Gallagher Grand Prix at Indianapolis Motor Speedway, although it is the infield circuit. Okay, so we've got...
Did they not do an infield circuit before the Grand?
They've got another one. So we've got more IndyCar, we've got more Formula One, and I'm pretty sure we've got the MotoGP correspondent back with us next week as well.
I think he's only back when MotoGP starts, he was telling me today.
Oh, cool. Guys, thank you so much for your time. Those people listening, again, super grateful for staying on board. Please keep the shares, keep the likes, keep the spreading the word coming. We really appreciate it, and we will talk to you again in a week's time. Please, if you have any questions that you would like us to answer on the pod, get in touch on our socials. But until next week, thanks guys. Have a great night.
Thanks, mate. Champion.